Welcome back, everybody, coast to coast. This Week in America. You'll find us online, thisweekinamerica.us. Martin Groveman is only half joking when he refers to himself as a basketball junkie. In the title of his book, Basketball is in My Blood, a basketball addict's autobiographical account. Every time he changed jobs or schools, he would also seek out the best basketball courts and the most challenging regular games. He would even travel with a pair of sneakers in his car, just in case. Even though he never played professional hoops, he competed with many who would become pros, including many NBA stars. Martin was based in New York, now retired from teaching at St. John University. Martin Groveman, author of Basketball is in My Blood, a basketball addict's autobiography, is our guest on This Week in America. Martin, a pleasure to have you on the program. Thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure for me to be on the air.
So many memories that I have as I'm going back following your life during these glory years of basketball in New York, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But let's start by talking about why you decided to write the book, what the inspiration was to go back and take the time and recount these glorious years that you had in love with basketball.
I actually started to write the book between classes when I was teaching at St. John's, which is my second career after I retired as a principal and deputy superintendent for New York's Division of Special Education. And while at St. John's, which has such a great basketball reputation and a history, one day I sat there and I said, you know something? This place inspires me to write what I've always wanted to do. And I began writing between classes. It took me about 10 years to finish it, but boy, am I happy that I did. So that was the last push, the motivation to get me going.
And so many people are glad you did. And let's talk about those early days for you. And so many young people can recall similar stories when they first fell in love with the game of basketball. Let's go back to PS 233, and there was a guy there that really got you excited about basketball, had a special way of getting people hooked on the sport, didn't he?
Yeah, he was my inspiration, and all my teammates at 233's inspiration. Ours was a neighborhood, when I moved from Brownsville, which is a poorer community, to East Flatbush, had a lot of open fields, and baseball by far was the big sport. We never even had in our elementary school a competitive team. And then Venty Leib, who was a prominent coach at Lincoln High School and came as a result of some licensing problem, made us into basketball players. He lit the spark, and believe it or not, within 2 years, my school, which never even had a competitive team, we won the Brooklyn Borough Championship when we were in the 8th grade for schools with a terminal grade of 8. And if it wasn't for Venty, I wouldn't have had the motivation. But I was a little skinny kid then, but I said, you know something? I'm going to be something someday in this sport. And just the spark became a fire eventually, you know. I never left.
What time frame are we talking about? This was like the late 40s?
This was... well, it was more than 30. Yeah, this was just about the second part, 45 of that decade, 45 to 50. And basketball, college basketball in New York was king, and all the local teams were unbelievable. And I graduated from that 8th grade school in 1951, actually. So we won our championship during the 1951 year, and then I went on to Tilden High School, which was a local prominent high school.
Yeah, and I'm going to talk about the high school and college career that you had in a second, but let's go back because it brings back so many memories of that era with the 4 powerhouse schools in New York City. This was at a time when the NIT was the major tournament. New York was sort of the focus of college basketball. Talk about the 4 schools there. In fact, I think in one of the leagues, as you were growing up, you actually...
Our little 4-team league in our recreational program was St. John, CCNY, NYU, and LIU. Those are our 4 teams, and those were the 4 best teams in New York City. And who knew at that time that I'd eventually go to CCNY and become a captain. but we pretended we were on one of those teams. Most of us didn't even have TVs at that time. We would listen to all the games on the radio, and they were announced brilliantly by a prominent broadcaster named Marty Glickman, who the nation probably remembers as a Jewish guy who wasn't allowed to run in the Yellin's Olympics. So.
Yeah, and he became such a classic announcer and trained so many of the announcers, even some that they're still working, calling games today.
Right. Marv Albert was one of his brothers.
Yes. With us on the program is Martin Groveman. The book is Basketball is in My Blood, a basketball addict's autobiography. The book's available wherever books are sold. Marty's website, by the way, is groveman-basketballisinmyblood.com. You can link on directly to that website by going to our website, thisweekinamerica.us. Mention the high school career, which you played, did very well. College, again, you mentioned you were captain of the team. Talk about the teammates, because I know you still have reunions where you get everybody together. Once you play with somebody on a basketball team, it's sort of like a lifetime friendship, isn't it?
Well, yeah, we still meet, the ones of us that are still living twice a year in a great Italian restaurant in Manhattan called Tony's di Napoli. But far and away, the best player on our team was a guy named Red Goldstein, who was an All-American at Louisville, and is one of 10 players whose numbers was retired and hung from the rafters at Freedom Hall in Louisville. And he, however, he was the ninth guy chosen in the NBA draft, and he chose to become a dentist rather than play in the league where salary was kind of meager these days. So he was the best on our team, and we lost in the semifinals in the Garden to Madison High School, whose best player was Rudy LaRusso, who played so many years with the Los Angeles Lakers. And other great teams with Jefferson and Boys High. Boys High had so many pro players, and the great Connie Hawkins came after me, but Tommy Davis, the batting champ, was an all-city basketball player at Boys High. So growing up was, I at that time didn't have a jump shot, and I was mediocre by comparison at that time.
But you're scrappy,
but
obviously.
Days.
Yeah, scrappy, obviously, because you made a name for yourself in playing basketball. Let's go back to that era when Venty actually got you hooked on basketball. And this is a sport that I understand till this day, you'll go out and shoot some hoops out there in retirement. What was it about basketball that really turned your life around? And you became hooked on it. It became a major part of your life. Still is.
Yeah, well, I did say that one of my purposes in writing the book was to show how my experiences and my own lifetime battle to become better and better has enriched my life in so many ways. I think I became a better educator off the court through basketball. I related better to people. I was a very good communicator. And even some of my values were shaped through basketball, especially my playing with and getting to know all the great black players and of that time, especially when I was a kid at this park called Betsy Head Park, how poor those guys were and how much basketball meant for their lives. And in a sad way, how very few of them had socioeconomic status, which allowed them to really join our society as a middle-class person who had a future and career and a steady job. So,
yeah, at that time, their career choices were certainly limited. And you talk about those days at Betsy Head and how you were exposed to that and the diversity and the social sensitivity that came out of the sport of basketball. It really shaped who you are today, didn't it?
It certainly did. And a lot of those guys were wonderful people and wonderful players, and most of them didn't even graduate from high school, so they didn't even have a chance to play in college or go further. And there were some people, mostly Jewish and Italian guys from the neighborhood, who would hire them to work in the garment center and push a hand truck or or wrote some stuff, but they really didn't have careers, and they really didn't have, bright futures. And it was definitely a social stratum they couldn't really overcome at that time.
No,
There were a few, like my friend Sally Walker, who was the first black player to play for St. John's, and a guy named Cy Green, who played for the St. Louis Hawks and was an All-American at Duquesne. But they were the rarities.
yes.
Most of them fell by the wayside.
Just amazing.
And unfortunately, many became alcoholics and drug addicts.
Yeah, it's just so sad with the stories of some of the people. It's in the book Basketball is in My Blood, a basketball addict's autobiography by Martin Groveman, our guest on the program. The book's available at his website, which is Groveman-basketballisinmyblood.com. If you go to our website, thisweekinamerica.us, you can link on directly. When you finished basketball in college, you really didn't finish basketball. That just became a different element, a different segment of basketball in your life.
First of all, I was robbed, and I became a real excellent jump shooter and a good scorer in college. And I was robbed of my last several games because I pushed my number up to go into the Army for 6 months and 5.5 reserves, hoping that maybe I could go to graduate school and not go to Vietnam, So I never got a chance to play my last 6 games because I went into the Army. That really ended the formal part of my basketball playing.
That's what we'll call it,
I did play on a great team in the Army, and as you said, I never stopped playing until my late 70s.
Formal is like a good way to describe that because you got those 6 games and many, many more, just not necessarily collegiate games in the course of your life. And I mentioned, part of this, we'll call it basketball in your blood, this addiction, is what, and that's a true story. When you would be reassigned jobs, schools, all of that, one of the first things you did was look for the neighborhood basketball court.
Right. Exactly. And even, this is not really a stretch. When I became a principal working with students with emotional disturbances, I would look to hire a number of teachers who were athletes, because if they were athletes and they were also good teachers, it was easier for them to have a rapport with our kids. They connected with our kids. And ways to get out in the yard. We had a crappy gym, but we had a wonderful court in our schoolyard, and we used to play, especially on Friday. We'd play against the kids. We'd rearrange the afternoon program, so we just became guys in the neighborhood and not their authoritarian teachers,
Well, yeah, and it's interesting, the career off the court, the educational aspect of that, working in education and dealing with kids that way, using some of the knowledge of that you remember from your youth growing up. Martin Groveman with us on the program. The book is Basketball is in My Blood. And it got to the point where, and you talk about it in the book, that several times during your marriage and raising the young family, your wife would say, basketball's great, but you're never home. Sometimes she had to remind you to put things in perspective.
When my kids were born, we eased that because I used to take them with me all the time, especially if I played on the weekends. And my kids were the best behaved kid they ever ran on the court. They just wanted to dribble on the sidelines, even when they were a year and a half or 2 years of age. And my younger one became a prominent basketball player in his own right, playing for Binghamton University. So, it was, my kids got so much out of it. And my friends were so nice to my kids. And my kids maintain communication with some of the guys, those that are still alive, who they met when I took them to the parks very, very early in their lives. And my youngest son, and you'll know his name, became friends with Wally Zerbiak, who had so many terrific years at Miami of Ohio.
Certainly.
And at the Minnesota Timberwolves, because his dad was one of my best friends. And Wally used to play with my sons, and in his workouts before he became the great player that he was. Yeah.
And have his picture in the book. So many pictures when you look back and you see the younger days and everybody trying to get together now and and sort of maintain those friendships, which is just one of the many elements that jumps out at the book, how it's not just basketball on the court and it's competition and then it's over. They're lifelong bonds, and you will get that story in Martin's book, Basketball is in My Blood. Talk about basketball today. Do young people still have that same desire for basketball? And then I'll go with the competitive nature of this. I'm sure you were beginning to see this even a few years ago when you were in basketball camp. People start playing, on travel squads and at an early age now, and you wonder if they're going to get tired of it because it's something that's become maybe almost too much forced on them. What? Maybe I'm wrong. What do you think of basketball today?
Well,
for young
we
people?
didn't have the AAU when we were kids,
Yes.
which is
Yes.
a money-making business operation, and a lot of the budding players have to be recommended by the AAU coaches, otherwise the big-time schools are not going to get them. So it's distorted a lot. But I would say the enthusiasm, primarily of black and Hispanic players, is greater than it was, because there are more educational opportunities for these youngsters, especially if they can keep in perspective that it's still a long shot to either play in the NBA or Europe.
Yes.
But on Long Island, where I still maintain a residence, the middle class of our population, soccer and especially lacrosse has taken the place. So the interest and the involvement of the Caucasian middle and upper middle class is not what it was. No way. There's no way. No.
As you think back,
and the unfortunate thing is many don't know the history, and especially in New York City, the legacy that from the Garden and the pre-scandal days and the starting of the Knicks and the Celtics, and it was a 16 league. I mean, it was unbelievable.
That's what one of the
it grew and grew and grew.
Yeah, one of the amazing aspects in reading the book, and it was so much fun reading it. Basketball is in My Blood, a basketball addict's autobiography by Martin Groveman, our guest on the program. A couple minutes left in the show, but it was so interesting. Went back and looked again at those chapters where you're talking about those early days in New York City. And I was young at the time and would follow basketball, and that was the mecca of basketball at that time. And yeah, the scandals, the tournament, the teams there, it was just an amazing era. And the nice thing too, and you bring this out as you're talking about playing basketball growing up, this is actually something what you can do by yourself. If you don't get a group of people together, you can get a basketball, go out and work on your jump shot all by yourself, can't you?
Exactly. In my case, though, there was a wonderful player. More people remember Roger Brown, who played for the Indiana Pacers, and Connie Hawkins, who eventually got into the NBA after he sued the NBA because they were involved with this guy who actually played for the Fort Wayne Pistons, named Jack Molinas, involved them in a second scandal. And the third guy was the guy, Tony Jackson, who was an All-American for St. John's. And he was 2 years younger than me, but he was maybe as good a jump shooter as ever played. And I used to run from my home about a mile to the Brownsville Recreation Center whenever I was free, and I patented my jump shot, although I couldn't jump like him, that's for sure. But I patented my jump shot off of his, and that's what really made me a player, So he was barred from the NBA, but it was a great influence on my basketball life, and we remained friends our entire lives, and I would see him and so many other of the prominent New York metropolitan area players at these functions, reunions, and I still see them. We still go to many of them.
And I would assume
diminishing group.
Yeah, that's the sad thing, that each year you go back and fewer people are there. But I assume when you go back, you're 17, 18, 19 years old all over again, and these stories are vivid, maybe exaggerated a little bit when people start telling them, but that's sort of like you go back into that era, don't you?
Yeah, I don't, you know something, and they said, you must have had like great outruns and really scratch your brain to remember these names. When I put myself into a particular period, it came like this water, rolling off my back.
Oh, yes.
It was easy. I remembered everything. I still remember everything. I lose my keys, but I remember all of that.
But you remember who you played back at Betsy Head back in 1951. You know, if you recognize some of the names that Martin's been talking about, the book is full of them. Names, many that you don't know, many that you do know. Many went on to excellent NBA basketball careers or pro basketball careers. Time went by too quickly. Martin Groveman is our guest on the program. That's Groveman. The book is Basketball is in My Blood, a basketball addict's autobiography. The book is available, of course, at Amazon, wherever books are sold, and at Martin's website, which is groveman-basketballisinmyblood.com. If you go to our website, thisweekinamerica.us, you can link on directly to Martin's website, get information on the book, and order it there as well. Martin, it's been a real pleasure. I've been looking forward to this, not disappointed. Great to read the book. Great to have you on the program. Thank you so much for sharing all your memories with us on the program.
Yeah, it was a treat for me to be on with you, Rick, and I could talk for days on it, but you hit all the right spots, and yeah, I'm still available.
It's been a pleasure.
If anybody wants to reach out to me.
Yes, and so much more we can talk about, and hopefully we will be able to do that. Once again, the book is Basketball is in My Blood, a basketball addict's autobiography. Martin Groveman, our guest on the program. His website is groveman-basketballisinmyblood.com. If you go to our website, thisweekinamerica.us, you'll link on directly to Martin's website. And we're back on today's program right after these messages.